All right, buckle up for a deep dive into a superhero flick that might leave you checking under the bed tonight. You wanted Venom, Let There Be Carnage, and how it sneaks in some horror, even though it's not like a straight-up horror movie.
Oh, yeah, great choice. Venom. Let There Be Carnage has all the action and the laughs, but underneath, it definitely plays with some seriously creepy stuff.
I mean, right off the bat, that opening scene on Planet Clentar. Whoa. Null, the symbiote god. Just his look is enough to give you nightmares.
Yeah.
Those shadowy tendrils, that blank void where his face should be.
Yeah.
It's like staring into, I don't know, oblivion or something.
You hit the nail on the head with that. Null's design and his whole plan to just, like, consume the universe, that taps right into cosmic horror. It's that classic Lovecraftian fear, you know? The idea that humanity is just a speck of dust compared to the vastness of the cosmos, and that out there in that vastness are things we can't even begin to understand.
Right. Like, we think we're the top of the food chain.
Yeah.
And then something like Null comes along and it's like, nope, you're just a snack.
Exactly. And it's not just him. Don't forget those xenophage creatures. Those things are pure nightmare fuel. Relentless, unstoppable in their design. All teeth and dripping symbiote goo. Yuck.
Straight out of a horror movie.
They really tap into that primal fear, right? Of being hunted by something totally alien. You can't reason with it. You can't fight it. You're just prey. And that feeling of helplessness, that's terrifying.
Yeah, you're just along for the ride at that point.
Yeah.
And speaking of things that are kind of beautiful and horrifying at the same time, can we talk about the symbiotes themselves? I mean, the way they move, all fluid and like slithering. And those teeth. It's like body horror, but with a superhero twist.
Body horror plays on those deep-seated fears we have. Disease, mutation, our bodies betraying us. And the symbiotes, they take it to a whole other level.
Yeah.
Imagine losing control of your own body. Your flesh, your bones, even your thoughts. Not yours anymore. It's a violation on a very basic level.
Yeah. And it's not just the physical stuff, that feeling of being taken over.
Yeah.
It's psychological, too. Just look at Eddie Brock. He's constantly fighting with Venom for control.
Oh, absolutely. That internal struggle. Pure psychological horror. It's the fear of losing yourself, your identity, to something else. It's a fear of the unknown within, and that can be way scarier than any external threat.
Because how do you fight something that's a part of you?
Exactly. It's a battle you can't win by just punching harder.
That's what makes it so disturbing.
Yeah, it makes you question who's really in control.
And how much of ourselves are we willing to sacrifice to survive?
That's a question a lot of horror movies ask, and Venom definitely doesn't shy away from it.
Nope, it dives right in.
Yeah.
And that's what makes it so effective.
Agreed. Even with all the superhero action, it's those horror elements that really get under your skin.
And stick with you long after the credits roll.
Exactly. You know what's really interesting? How the movie uses sound to crank up that fear factor. Like, remember those xenophage shrieks?
Yeah.
Or the sounds the symbiotes make when they're attacking?
Oh, man, don't even get me started on those sounds. Like nails on a chalkboard, but a million times worse.
Right. But it works. Those sounds just get right under your skin, They bypass all the logic and reasoning and just tap right into those primal fear centers in our brains.
It's true. It's like your brain knows it's just a movie, but your body's like, nope, we're getting out of here.
Exactly. And it's not just those big in-your-face sounds either. It's the whole atmosphere the sound design creates. This constant feeling of tension, like something bad is about to happen. It keeps you on edge, even when there's nothing actually happening on screen.
It's like a horror movie soundtrack, but in a superhero movie, which I guess makes sense given what we're talking about.
Right. And speaking of horror movie vibes, can we talk about Cletus Kasady for a second? Carnage. I mean, he's a terrifying villain on the surface, but there's also this whole layer of psychological horror to him that's just, like, extra unsettling.
Oh, for sure. He's definitely got that classic slasher villain vibe going on. Brutal, unpredictable, seemingly unstoppable. But then you learn about his backstory, the traumatic childhood, the messed up relationship with Shriek, and it adds this whole other layer to his character.
It's like you almost feel a tiny bit sorry for him at times, and then he goes and does something completely horrific, and you're snapped right back to reality. It's that constant push and pull that makes him so disturbing. You never quite know what to make of him.
You're never quite sure if he's a victim of circumstance or just like pure evil. And that uncertainty is scary.
It makes you question what makes a monster, right? Is it nature or nurture? And how much control do we really have over our own dark impulses? Those are questions that horror movies have been exploring forever.
Venom, Let There Be Carnage brings those questions into the superhero genre in a really interesting way.
It's like they're saying, hey, these questions aren't just for horror movies. They're relevant everywhere, even in a world of superpowers and alien symbiotes.
And it's not just Cletus. The movie also touches on that whole horror of being an outsider, of being different. You see it with Eddie Brock, too. He's already an outcast, a fugitive, and then he bonds with this alien symbiote that makes him even more of a freak.
That's such a classic horror trope, right? Being ostracized, feared, rejected for something you can't control. It plays on our own anxieties about being misunderstood, about not sitting in.
And with Eddie, it's even more intense because he's literally bonded to this creature that represents everything society is afraid of. He's a walking embodiment of those fears.
And the film doesn't shy away from the psychological toll that takes on him. You see him struggling with isolation, with self-doubt, with the fear of losing himself entirely to Venom.
Yeah, it's like he's constantly walking this tightrope between who he is and who Venom wants him to be. And that struggle is both fascinating and terrifying to watch.
And that fear of losing yourself, of being consumed by something bigger and more powerful, it's a theme that runs throughout the whole movie. You see it with Eddie and Venom, with Cletus and Carnage, even with the looming threat of Null and his xenophages. It's like this constant reminder that we're all vulnerable to being overtaken by forces outside our control.
Whether those forces are external, like an alien symbiote, or internal, like our own dark impulses.
Exactly. And that's what makes Venom, Let There Be Carnage, so effective. It takes these classic horror themes and weaves them into a superhero narrative in a way that's both entertaining and thought-provoking.
It's wild how they take these classic horror tropes, like losing control, being consumed by something else, and make them work in a superhero movie.
It works because those fears are, like, universal, you know? They tap into something primal, something we all share.
Yeah, like those xenophages.
Yeah.
They weren't just monsters running around, they were extensions of Null, which made them even creepier.
Totally. Like a little taste of cosmic horror, right? A reminder that even with superheroes, there are things out there that we can't even comprehend.
And then you've got Eddie Brock, always fighting for control.
Yeah.
Not just of his body, but his mind. Like he's wrestling with an addiction or something.
Oh, that's a good comparison. The way Venom tempts him with power, with letting go of his inhibitions, it's like how addiction can take hold.
Yeah.
And that fight to stay in control, that's what makes it so compelling.
Almost like Venom and Eddie are two sides of the same coin. You know, like the movie's exploring this duality, this good and evil inside all of us. It gets pretty deep pretty fast.
It makes you think about, like, what makes us who we are. Are we really in control? Or are we just shaped by the things around us, by the choices we make? It's a question a lot of horror movies ask.
For sure. So, for someone who hasn't seen Venom, Let There Be Carnage, what's the one thing you want them to take away from this deep dive?
That horror can be anywhere, even in a superhero movie. And that it can make the story better, more complex, more exciting, more thought-provoking.
Absolutely. Like even with all the crazy action and superpowers, it's those human fears, those internal struggles that really hit home. Well, that was our deep dive into the unexpected horror of Venom. Let There Be Carnage. Hopefully you guys found it interesting, maybe even a little bit spooky.
And if you're feeling brave, give the movie a watch.
Rocking lobsters rise up tall, pincers flashing, hear that call. Sandy shores, their new domain. Crustacean rulers break the chain. Country lands, oceans tide, from the currents can't hide. Pinch of fate, claws of doom. Underwater kings make room. Rock lobsters taking over.